All right, we're about to take a deep dive inside Facebook during its most explosive period of growth. And we're going to do it through the eyes of a former executive who saw the company's reckless culture from the inside.
You've probably heard this famous quote from The Great Gatsby. It's all about incredible wealth and a total lack of accountability. Well, that quote isn't just a fancy opening. It's the title and the central theme for a blistering takedown of Meta written by one of its own.
So we're going to follow the journey of Sarah Wynn-Williams. She started as this idealistic diplomat who joined the company, and she ended up a completely disillusioned insider. Her story really helps us understand the human cost of a growth-at-all-cost mentality.
Sarah Wynn-Williams, like so many others, joined Facebook because she really believed in that mission to connect the world. But, the reality she walked into on her very first day, it was jarring, to say the least.
So right off the bat, there's this huge disconnect. She's thinking she's joining this serious hub for a new global order. Instead, the office feels more like a chaotic college dorm room. It was the very first sign of this massive gap between what the company said it was and what it was actually like on the inside.
And this culture, you have to understand, it was all by design. It was meant to keep employees inside the Facebook bubble, working pretty much around the clock. But it also created this bizarre world of extreme wealth, incredible pressure, and this subtle but really fierce internal competition, a world that was a total contrast to the one they claimed they were building for everyone else.
And this kind of environment doesn't just happen by accident. It was shaped from the very top by leaders whose actions, well, they often spoke way louder than any motivational posters on the wall.
When you lay it all out like this, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. It wasn't just one thing, but a whole series of actions where company resources were used for personal benefit. This created a leadership style that, by its very nature, systematically walled itself off from any criticism or inconvenient truths.
Sometimes it's the little things, the really small moments that tell you everything you need to know. On an executive retreat, a seemingly innocent board game offered this perfect little window into the company's soul. As the game went on, it felt off. It became pretty obvious that the game was kind of rigged. Other executives were making these totally lopsided trades and just nonsensical moves, all designed for one single purpose. They were all letting Mark Zuckerberg win. Think about that for a second. Even in a simple, low-stakes board game, nobody dared to let the CEO lose. This created this perfect echo chamber where he was never wrong, a dynamic that would have massive, massive consequences when the stakes were a lot higher than trading sheep for ore.
And this kind of detachment, well, it went way beyond board games. According to Wynn-Williams, Zuckerberg actually thought that something more important might come up that would cause him to miss the birth of his first child. It just shows this profound disconnect from normal human experience in favor of his all-consuming mission.
So this internal mindset, it didn't stay internal for long. It started spilling out into the real world, where the whole idea of breaking things often meant breaking actual people. Okay, this next story is chilling, to say the least. Senior leadership wanted to go to South Korea, but were worried about some legal issues. Their solution? Send a junior employee, in this case a new mother, as bait, as literal cannon fodder, to see if she'd get arrested first. It's just a shocking example of how disposable employees were in this relentless pursuit of global expansion. And this wasn't just about growth, it was about dominance. Zuckerberg wasn't just building a platform, he was actively thinking about how to weaponize it. He was inspired by Uber's aggressive tactics and literally planned to use Facebook's tools to mobilize users, go after his adversaries, and fight his political and business battles.
So as Facebook's power just exploded, that internal culture of denial and toxicity started to take a really severe personal toll on the people working there.
This moment right here, this public denial just days after the 2016 election, was huge. It wasn't just a PR slip-up. It showed a core, fundamental unwillingness, right from the very top, to even accept responsibility for the platform's enormous real-world impact. And this doublespeak wasn't just for big political issues. The company's public statements were often in direct contradiction to what they were doing internally. For example, while they publicly swore they didn't target users' emotions, an internal ad presentation explained exactly how to target teens at the precise moment they felt worthless or insecure.
So the toxic culture wasn't just some abstract idea. It was real. It was happening to people. When Wynn-Williams finally reported her own boss for a pattern of wildly inappropriate, harassing comments, what did the company do? Nothing. So what happens when you speak up, when you push back against that culture? In her case, after 7 years, the system's response was swift, brutal, and final. She was fired and escorted out of the building.
But this whole story doesn't just end when one person gets fired. It really opens up these huge, fundamental questions about power and responsibility in our digital world.
And to really understand what's going on, you have to follow the money. And this is fascinating. China is actually Facebook's second largest source of revenue, even though the platform is officially blocked there. That one fact tells you so much about the gap between their public principles and their actual business goals.
And you get the best look at this mindset when you see how they prepared for Congress. The game plan wasn't transparency, it was just evasion. When they prepped for a question comparing their China strategy to Nazi complicity, the coached response wasn't a real defense. It was an emotional deflection.
So, when you put it all together, what you have is this modern parable of Silicon Valley. It's a story of an idealistic mission that got completely corrupted by a culture of unaccountable power, reckless growth, and a leadership team that was totally insulated from any real consequences.
And that brings us right back to the beginning, right back to that Gatsby quote. It leaves us with a really big and frankly pretty unsettling question. If the people building our digital world are truly careless people, then who on earth is left to clean up the mess?